welcome to another FACEHAMMER episode. We are going to be talking about the big man, Archaon, today.
Yeah, we started with Be'lakor, but screw it. Let's talk about the real deal.
Let's talk about the real Everchosen. So this show, I'm going to talk about Archaon now. It's a big topic, so we're not going to cover all the possibilities of what you can do with Archaon because it would be way too much. Doesn't mean we won't in the future, but we're going to focus today on a Tzeentch army that good friend of mine, Steve Follows, has provided me as a tried and tested tournament list, as he's actually played some TTS events that had some success. And
I was going to talk about just how Archaon works in of himself and things that might go with him, aren't we? So we won't go into like a corn list, but we will say generally you would consider, I don't know, taking a Sorcerer Lord, whatever it is.
I think what going through this army will highlight is how you maximize him in that context, and then if you wanted to write a Khorne or a Slaanesh list, there'll be similar things you want to look at in terms of how to enhance him, like if it's a buff, if it's a synergistic piece, if it's an allegiance ability or something like that makes him better. So that doesn't mean that you can't run him in other allegiances, but this gives me like a framework to explain how to maximize the big man. And
protect him, ways to like double his damage, whatever it is. We'll be covering everything.
How to crush your enemies and see them driven before you is probably the theme of this list. I love it. I probably shouldn't love it as much as I do, but
on a 1 to, I know shit use the word.
It's almost obnoxious, this army.
Is it 11? Is it 12?
It's definitely a Spinal Tap list. I think it's. I think the thing is, Steve's obviously played a lot of it. He's thought about it a lot, and there's a lot of Archaons around. Like Dan from Air Short sent me a DM about Brishammer, talking about a Slaanesh army that did well, which we'll touch on later. But actually, what was interesting, I saw Coach did a thing where he had all the Archaons lined up and he scanned his phone across all the Archaons, because I think there was like 9 or 10 at a 60-player event. So, which is nice to see, because actually you don't normally see Archaon very often. So obviously the meta's been moving, and the UK's kind of been standing still for us, or my personal gaming hasn't been happening, so it's very hard for me to be in touch with competitive Age of Sigmar in terms of like what's actually in the mix at events. Obviously there's different
so many releases, there's so many releases, and because part of Archaon's strength, I think, which is maybe what people haven't done before. We've seen Archaon lists in the past that involve Vanguard and some weird techie stuff with mercenaries and bravery debuffs and things, but it hasn't been people taking something else and dumping him in it and making the most of the fact that you can throw any buff from Chaos almost at that model and he will take it.
Yeah, and like I've not played competitive AOS since February 2020. I played a semi-competitive friendly day, as you did when we had a revised lockdown at Breakspear's place when I used Sons of Behemat. But actually, like the last time that there's been so many releases with like Lumineth, Hedonites, all the Broken Realm stuff, the new updated scrolls, we haven't been able to really see that marinade within the meta, and like I think what's good about the international events, you get a little peek, but it's different because people play Warhammer different ways in different places, and the meta is different. But it's just interesting.
Like the world's largest drop of centaur-shaped models in Warhammer history.
So Warhammer Fest announcement's been this week, and we've seen the Vengorian Lord for Soulblight and Kragnos, which is a bit Marmite. I think it's probably the way I'd describe it, which means, for those who don't know what Marmite is, it's love it or Vegemite, I should say, for the Aussies. But it's love it or hate it, basically. I'm firmly on the not liking it side. But,
it doesn't, not for me personally, but, let's wait for it being there in person and alternate colours.
Yeah, and maybe see a different take on it, and maybe a head swap is in order, I think. But anyway, we're going to talk about Archaon. So, obviously, Archaon is the Everchosen, and he's a pretty beastly fellow. He comes in at about 800 points, I believe, at the moment.
It is 800, yeah.
So let's look at his Warscroll. So it's quite a big one. There's a lot on there. So obviously you can look at it yourself on the website. You could just go to the Archaon on the web store, go down to the bottom and find the obscure download link in the rules and then look at it. But essentially, he's got 20 wounds of a 3-up save. He's movement 14, he flies. Obviously, he's got the Slayer of Kings, which is the iconic weapon that he always has. It's damage free, Ren 2. It's hits on a 2, wounds on a 3. It's very good. Then you've got Dorgar's attacks, which is this monstrous mount, upgraded since the old end times. So, yeah, solid attack profile. Now, his base is also, it's worth mentioning this because I've used Archaon. His base is humongous. It is 160 millimeter round.
Yeah,
it's huge, and that presents its own issues because to deliver that combat power, that's quite a difficult thing to deliver in a technical way when he's just that big. Because if you look at his reach, it's 1 inch on most of his attacks. So he does have some limitations, but not many. So his abilities is really when he comes into his own. So he's got the Armour of Morcar, which is when he takes a mortal wound. That's not a normal wound. It's not like an after save. It's only mortals. On a 4+, you ignore it. On a 6, it bounces it back. So that's pretty cool. You get the Crown of Domination, which adds 2 to bravery of Chaos models. Not really that impactful, but the other side of that is you subtract 2 from bravery of enemy units, which can be fairly effective if you're trying to make people battle shock. Then obviously you've got the Eye of Sheeran, or Eye of Ed Sheeran, your go away girl item, which used to be a bit janky because you used to have to roll a dice, and if they roll the same, they re-roll it. Now it's just flat re-roll hit rolls of 6 that target the model, and that doesn't say melee, so that's shooting and combat. So
it's a great ability. Anyone who's played with Nurgle knows how great it is for moving people's capacity for 6s.
Yeah, it's just a free wither stave that he's holding around, so loving that. Now he's also got the Everchosen, so if he's affected by a spell or end the spell, you can roll a dice. On a 4+, you just ignore it. So you said not today. Don't want that. That can be. It sounds better than it is. It's 50-50. I lost a game to Ben Savard because he played a blinder actually of Marathi, like keeping her small, moving her back, being out of unbind range, but with her extended range able to cast Parch on my Archaon, which meant he couldn't get where he needed to go. So but I had a 4-up ignore and I failed that, and it's like that 50-50. You're like, oh man, it's good, but it can also be bad.
This goes for your own spells as well, right?
It can, so you don't have to. So you just decide, no, I don't want to roll it this time. So no, it's only going to be beneficial. The Slayer of Kings, a modified wound roll for 2 attacks that target the same hero, is a 6. The hero is slain. So
modified is different to some other stuff that we will be covering in a bit.
Yeah, so this is an unmodified wound roll, so it's a flat 6 on the dice. So you can't give him pluses or 5s anymore. You used to be able to, you can't anymore. Now, Dorgar's rules have changed a little bit since the original scroll. I think this might be the 3rd scroll he's had, I can't remember. But
yeah, at least.
At the start of your hero phase, you can draw on the might and choose one effect. So you can either pick a unit within 12 on a 3+, to take D3 mortals. You can heal D3 wounds.
So good.
You could just pick an end of spell with an 18 and just dispel it, which is fine. Then you also get an extra command point if spell it. Yeah. The next rule is Warlord Vatical. You get an extra command point at the start of your hero phase, so just for free. So every hero phase you'll get 2 command points rather than 1. So I should have probably mentioned that when we were talking. You were asking me about command point problems with Slaanesh with Archaon, and I was like, I completely forgot he did that now because he never used to have that rule. So that makes him super efficient because it always gives you an extra resource to use his ability, which I'll get onto in a minute. But he's also a wizard. Could cast 2 spells. So he's got Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield
Thankfully.
now.
So many people have just got one there. Like, it's annoyingly common in the game. You get like some beastie, like 800 point whatever, and it says they can cast 1 spell if they like.
Yeah, just the one. Now, he's got a command ability where he can pick 1 Slaves to Darkness unit on the battlefield, and until the end of the battle round, if a model from that unit is slain by a melee weapon, it can fight before it's removed. So you use it in your hero phase, and it's to the end of that battle round. So timing might be an issue. If they go first in the battle round, it won't be on. But if you're going first, then you could turn it on. But also, like, if you're playing outside of slaves, it's generally only going to affect himself. But that's still extremely good because
it's fine.
You can effectively be super aggressive. Push
if you pick anyone on the table to use it on it, it'd probably be him.
Well,
anyway,
you kind of push.
Unless
you can be
Vanguard.
really ballsy, especially if they've got another superhero. I mean, if you're playing in a mirror match, for example, you can. And Steve mentioned this to me when I asked him for the TLDR bridge notes on how to play his list. He said you can just buff him, put him in the middle of the table, and say go kill him. But if you kill him, this command ability pops off, and I hit you, and I'll probably kill you back.
Yeah.
If you don't kill him, then he's still there. So you're controlling the game with that. So super effective. Like, it seems a bit innocuous, but that's actually pretty effective if you use it right.
I think more defensive than people think, because you could spend a CP, do that on him, and then people could not attack him with whatever it is, a Bloodthirster or Scarbrand or something hitty enough to be able to kill him in combat, and in which case you spent a CP and kept nearly 50% of your army alive, which is fine. Yeah,
and you've got another ability, which is All-Seeing Dominion, which is you can use this when your opponent does a command ability.
We should use it.
So you roll a dice on a 2-up, you get to use the command, the previous one we just mentioned ability, without spending a command point, even if it's not the hero phase, and even if the command ability has already been used in that turn. So
yes, please. It's
kind of crazy because basically it allows you to mitigate that issue if the battle round ends and they win the turn roll, they suddenly can't really use command abilities because you can turn that on. So some armies won't care. Like, I don't think Lumineth would really. But it's something to be aware of if you're playing against Archaon. It's like,
I was just going to say, top tip: just don't like, spend very few armies need that thing that much. It's part of a greater plan. So you could just not give him that ability, and that's a pretty good investment in keeping one of your CPs held back.
Yeah, and probably the most important bit of his Warscroll, which is bizarre, is the keyword bit.
Every keyword ever.
Because he's got Demon, Mortal, Slaves, Everchosen, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, Slaanesh, Head Knight, Undivided, Monster, Hero, Wizard, Archaon. So he's basically fits into any of the allegiances. So whether that's Slaves of Darkness, Khorne, or Tzeentch, or Nurgle, or Slaanesh, and he also means that or a Demon for Legion of First Prince, when we did our Bellicle show, we did an Archaon and Bellicle list, which I thought was actually pretty solid. He's unusual because basically most buffs will buff him. Mm-hmm. He also gets access to the Demon lore from the book. So if he's in like Head Knights, for example, you get access to the greater demon or the demon spells, not just the mortal spells.
Yeah.
But you can pick and choose. So like in Nurgle as well, there's mortal and demon spells, and the same with Tzeentch. So you can pick the spell that best gives you what you want. And
2 more spells casting as well is nice, and getting to pick one of those to be something that fills a gap, or maybe there's something you wouldn't have taken, but because now you've got Archaon, you will take. May as well put it on him. He's going to be within range of himself.
You see that innocuous spell, and it's like it's cast on the wizard itself, and it makes them better in combat. And you're like, well, where is that going to be useful? Well, actually, Archaon.
I'll buff my keepers 2 attacks. Oh wait, yeah.
Well, there's some good stuff in here. So that's Archaon's Warscroll. So 800 points, 20 wounds, Frip save, pretty good. Obviously, doesn't like high rend because he doesn't have an after save.
These non-mortals.
He's non-mortal high rend shots or like attacks will be difficult.
Just like it's the opposite of Nagash.
No, same, I think.
Yeah. That KO shooting going the big boys since they were released.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Archaon. So I think what probably do is talk about Steve's list.
Yeah.
Explain what's in it, and then we're going to have to like jump around a bit and talk about. I've got some of the allegiance abilities and Tzeentch stuff to talk about. In case you're not familiar with it, I think it's better just to cover everything, so you do know what it all does and you can understand the synergy.
Yeah, you need to make like an Archaon bingo where it's like if you're writing a list, you must. So it's like have auto dispels, have a way to increase his movement value, have a way to protect him, have a pre-game move. All this stuff. I should write like a 9. I should do
9 is appropriate as it's the number of Tzeentch.
So, yeah, he's probably got at least 9.
So let's go into the list then. So this is the list Steve sent me. So it's Allegiance of Tzeentch under the Change Coven host Arcanum. There are some variants on this that use Duplicitous Host or other ones, but this is the one that Steve prefers because he thinks better in the mirror. You've got Archaon, obviously, it's an Archaon list, with a Law of Fate, Infusion, Arcanum. What the stuff does, I'll explain in a minute. So Chaos Sorcerer Lord, in my opinion, auto-include when you've got Archaon. He's got a command trait and the artifact because you have to take those, and he's the only non-named hero in his list. He's got the spell for the Law of Fate, Shield of Fate. Again, I'll go through this in more detail. The Blue Scribes, which has got the Arcane Transformation spell. Kairos Fate Weaver for Bolt of Tzeentch. 2 units of Screamers, which become battle line in Host Arcanum. 2 units of 10 Kyric Acolytes. And then 3 endless spells, the Umbral Spell Portal, Geminids of Orgish, and the Darkfire Daemonrift. 2,000 points, 82 wounds. So very
also
elite.
1,500 points of heroes before spells, roughly, right?
Yeah, it's hero hammer at its best.
Points on battle line, and the rest is heroes or spells, which is nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So let's talk a little bit about what the Tzeentch stuff does. So
cover book stuff first, or the scrolls that are in there?
We'll talk about the book stuff, then we'll go to the scrolls, because the book, you need to understand what the book does to kind of like overlay everything. So
sure.
We'll talk about Tzeentch as an allegiance, because when you pick Archaon, you have to decide what allegiance is he in, right? So Tzeentch has some of the strongest allegiance abilities, I would say, in the game for match play.
To ignore probability, which is what screws people. So,
because you can just basically guarantee things, because Master of Destiny, so you get Destiny dice, which is super cool. I love Destiny dice. Like, as a mechanic, I think it's really, really interesting. You basically roll 9 dice at the beginning of the game. They can be used for different things. So what you can do, instead of making a dice roll, you can replace it with a Destiny dice. You spend them like a resource. So you can only spend them on casting, unbinding, dispelling, run, charge, hit, wound, save, any roll for damage characteristic of a missile or melee weapon, and battle shock tests.
Is that it, Russ? None of those
only. So it does make a difference, because there's some rolls that have like nothing to do. Like, for example, like Archaon's 4+ ignore, you can't use that on that because it's none of those things. So like it's important to understand the limitations. Same with like if you're doing a mortal wound roll, it does D6 mortal wounds. You can't make that a 6 because that's not a damage roll. Yep. So that's because it's not determining a damage characteristic. It's doing a thing. You can't modify that. It's also go on.
I was going to say, if you are playing against someone with this and something feels wrong, just have to look at that bit of the book, because some things you would think it would cover, it doesn't, and some things you wouldn't think it would cover, it probably will. So it's a unique rule in the game, and a lot of those it's good to be a bit clued up on, I think, before you play against them or with them.
It's important to know its limitations. Is I would say, like, and it says that you can, if you replace a 2d6 roll, such as a casting or a charge roll, you have to spend 2 dice. You can't just spend 1. So one of the in the old rules, you could spend 1 on like a Lord of Change and on a casting roll, and the other dice would change to match it.
Yeah, cheeky.
But this actually says these rolls cannot be modified or re-rolled any other way. So if you replace a Lord of Change casting roll, that rule wouldn't trigger, I don't think, because it would modify the dice further. So you're replacing. So anything that's a 2d6 roll, like a charge, an unbind, a cast, is actually quite costly. So it's not as powerful as it used to be. It's been toned down a little,
or not as efficient, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's still powerful, but you're going to be able to do it less often. Is probably the way I would describe it.
It also means that people can't, like, see a 9, know they've got a 6, and be like, that I'll only spend 1 6. It always felt a bit grim when someone did that against you. It's too efficient. So I think that feels fair.
So obviously you can only use it on Tzeentch units, for friendly Tzeentch units. So it doesn't affect the enemy dice rolls. It's only yours.
Yep.
Kairos kind of ignores that, but we'll get onto that.
Just be clear with people as well. What we mean when we say we'll roll 9 dice is you literally roll 9 dice on the table and you just leave them as what they were. So you're probably hoping for some 1s for pop tests to stop you from crumbling, or rather make you come back to life as it's a demon, and some 6s for saves, and then you get some solid 4s or stuff, and it just helps you guarantee whatever.
Yeah, like a 4 and a 3, that's a 7. That's a good casting roll. That's a good charge roll. When you need a 7, it's like, well, I'll just use the 2 dice. If it's a save, you got a 3-up save, or it's a 3. I'll use that. Particularly good on stuff like if there's like a big damage attack coming in, and you go, well, I'll just make sure I save that. I'm not going to risk rolling the dice. So you can't roll the dice.
2d6 damage attack. Cool, I know about 6. If 1 gets through,
yeah. Where you can just mitigate stuff like 2 get through, potential 12 damage.
Yeah.
I'm going to make 1 doesn't go through. It's only 6 damage. I've got more than 6 wounds. I can't die. So it's like you can, and I think the skill in using this effectively is another topic in itself. But
it's a bean counters army, isn't it? Let's be.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an accountant's army.
Like Brad from accounting, like he's saying, like, oh, actually, I'm going to carry the 4 and use this. It's a very it can feel very oppressive when you play against it, because it's almost like you get the emotional high. I mean, the old rules are different because you could roll the dice then change it. I believe now you have to do it before you roll the dice, because you used to get the emotional high of, oh, they've rolled poorly, then they just go nope, and you're like, oh, so it was even better because you could like only spend them when you needed to. Now you've got to kind of anticipate the roll. So again, it's that's weaker than what it used to be back in the day when I used to hate it. I
think that's also, they brought more skill into it.
Yeah, it's you have to know when to spend it, when not to spend it, and I quite like it's a bit like why I like OBR. The decision making on that is in itself a game.
Just everything first turn, guys. Don't worry about patience.
Splurge it all.
It's overrated.
Splurge it all.
Splurge it all.
Now this next rule, locus have changed. So subtract 1 from hit rolls made by melee weapons that target friendly Tzeentch demon units that are wholly within 12 of a friendly Tzeentch demon hero. Now, Archaon is a demon, he's also Tzeentch, and he's a hero. So he is negative bind to hit in melee, just existing. So, again, Archaon, because he's got those keywords, that affects him. Obviously, you think it's probably for having a Lord of Change with Surrounded by Horrors, but actually Archaon just triggers it on himself. So, because he's wholly within 12 of himself. So it's like, it's fine.
He's already countering one of the specific things that he would be potentially weak against, because it doesn't matter how high-end shooting is if it doesn't hit him.
It's only melee, that one. But
is it melee?
Yeah, melee. So again, it doesn't really help for the weakness we highlighted of high-range shooting. Okay. So then you've got Change Coven. So there's a group of like overarching rules you can take in Tzeentch. We're not going to go through all those. Basically, we're going to talk about the one that's been picked, and we'll talk about that. So now, moreover than this as part of the allegiance, you have summoning. So in Tzeentch, you get a fate point each time a casting roll made by either player is successful and the spell's not unbound, you get a fate point. Then at the end of your movement phase, you can spend your fate points and summon a unit, and they must be set up wholly within 12 as Tzeentch hero, more than 9 away. And you subtract the costs from your fate points. Now,
that's pretty efficient because you get to do it in the turn that you cast the spells.
Yes,
because they instantly appear.
Because you cast in hero phase before you get to there, but also your opponent has a choice to make. Do they feed your points, or do they not cast? And then you get the same issue that if you're playing against Tzeentch. So one of the things Steve says when he plays against Tzeentch Archaon in the mirror, this becomes a game of cat and mouse with, do I cast that buff or do I let the buff not go off because I don't want to get in the points to then summon? So it's quite important because in the mirror you're both racking up fate points as each other's casting. So it's like you're playing a game of high stakes poker, I think, with that. So it's quite interesting. But obviously there's lots of stuff you can summon. I think blue horrors are very popular as a summoning choice.
Makes sense.
For 10 points. Scream is also very good for 10 points. He didn't mention flamers, but I imagine like an exalted flamer might be a good choice if you want to shoot something off. But he basically said it's blues and screamers, mostly what he summons.
Makes sense of board control. One's very fast and one's
his list struggles with board control and objective holding. That's why he wants bodies, cheap bodies, and speed. So
nice.
So from the Crystal Labyrinth. Host Arcanum then. So right, this is the Coven that he's picked. So you have the Thieves of all things arcane. So once per turn in the first, third and fifth battle round, when a friendly host Arcanum wizard attempts to unbind a spell, the spell is automatically unbound. So
bingo. There's one.
Auto unbind. So that's
in turn one as well, of course, when you want it in turn one.
Yeah. So it's really good because obviously like some stuff are an auto stop. You've got to stop it and you can and you don't have to use it. And it's only once. Obviously you might decide to let stuff go to get the fate point, because if you unbind it, you don't get the fate point. So, but it's an automatic unbind. Like
some things are cast on a 16 or a 15 from a buffed person as well. And you still like stop it.
And again, what this does as well, it makes you efficient with your fate dice because you don't need to use fate dice to unbind a good roll. You can just automatically stop it. So I think that's quite understated. I think that's quite powerful.
Yeah, that thing that you face in 1 in 20 games, which is, I don't know, someone teleporting a unit of 30 Iron Drakes, something obscure but scary. You're just like, well, no. Or like you've mirrored already and I failed to stop it. I'll stop Hand of Dust instead, and then you can't do anything with the mirror, and I still got my summoning point or whatever. It's powerful. Yeah.
And then you've got like the Entourage of Sky Sharks, so a command ability, which is in your hero phase, pick a host Arcanum Screamer unit, wholly within 12 of a hero. Until a next hero phase, add 1 to saves. For attacks that target the unit. In addition, improve the rend of its lamprey bite. So it's okay. Like you've got some screamers in your list, and you get a free unit, as we'll get onto. We talk about the Fanged Circlet, but I don't know. Is it a waste of a command point? Probably. But
depends the money you got, I guess.
You need to hold objectives, and sometimes +1 save can make a difference. So it's like we'll see, but. You've got the command trait, which you have to have. So this is very good. So after armies have been set up, before the first battle round, D3 host Arcanum units that can fly can move 6 inches. So Archaon can fly.
Yeah.
So
which makes up the fact that he is,
a 14 move. Yeah.
Only 14, but it's not 16. It's not 18. It's not super fast. So
it's the difference between the endless spells being in range on the first turn, him being able to actually get to them on the first turn. Also, it means if you're playing against people who want to alpha strike you with drops, you've got a way of pushing them back. Because you've got 2 freezer screamers, they can push out and give you some more space to deploy in if you're worried about that. So I can't see. That's very strong. Like, it's just very good.
Yeah, nothing else. There's one thing that wasn't incredibly strong, and it was still a nice option to have with the Screamers, with the rent and the save. So all those are solid.
And now this one is great. So you get an artifact once per battle, start of your hero phase, add 1 unit of 6 Screamers to your army.
All right.
So wholly within 9 of the bear and 9 away from enemy.
Fine.
So you just get a free unit. So I have a free unit of Screamers. Perfect.
Once per game, you get 160 points extra on your army. fine. That is whatever you'd said there would be good, even if it was the worst unit in the book.
I mean, it gives you another scoring unit.
Yeah,
it's solid.
And 6 is better for buffing than 3 if you are going to use that ability. So
yeah, and they're not awful, especially if you go after monsters. I think a Sons of Behemoth army might have come out in cold sweats if they fought against this. So
I think they would before,
but they would before that when Archaon sets up, right? So then you've got the Gifts of Worship. Now these are the Agendas of Anarchy. So these are a bit weird, but basically at the start of your hero phase, you can say that you're going to do one agenda. So you tell your opponent what it is. You can't do it more than once per battle, and if a Tzeentch unit, so Archaon could do these, does it, they gain an ability. If you get more than one, you have to pick the one you want. So you've got like Mass Conjuration, pick a Tzeentch Wizard. If it does 2 spells or endless spells in the hero phase with a modified casting roll of a 9, and they're not unbound, you get +1 to cast for Tzeentch Wizard that completed it, which is quite hard to do. You've got to declare you're going to do it before you do it. So it's not like you can, I've got it. You have to say, I'm going to go for it and then roll it. So I don't think it's that useful.
Unless you had like a first turn fate dice plan.
Yeah, maybe that's the case. Ninefold dismantlement. Pick an enemy unit on the battlefield as 9 or more models. If the unit's destroyed before the end of that turn, the agenda is complete. Add 1 to hit rolls made by melee weapons by a Tzeentch unit that destroyed the unit. So you could give Archaon +1 a hit by doing that. So he hits on a 2 anyway for his Slayer, but the other abilities don't hit on a 2, and it's the model, not that it will affect all of it, including Dorgar.
Yeah. Also, you might face Nurgle, and it might be necessary or something like that. Plenty of debuffs to hit out there.
This one's probably fairly good. Overthrow leaders. Pick an enemy hero or monster with wounds of 9 or more. If it's slain before the end of the turn, it's completed. Add 1 to save rolls for the friendly Tzeentch unit that destroyed the hero monster.
All right.
So obviously Archon's quite good at killing heroes and monsters, particularly if he's got the Slayer on a hero and you've got fate
Does that
dice.
count if someone casts a spell or an endless spell? Can you clarify that type of stuff?
I don't think it would work on an endless spell, but it might work on a normal spell. It's probably FAQ'd, but I haven't checked it. The endless spell, it probably affect if you cast the endless spell that turn and it killed a hero. Yeah. But I imagine you're going to be doing it for Archaon, and you're going to be doing it in combat, and you're going to be going, I'm going to kill that thing, and he's going to go kill it. Asked. So, it's however you do it, as long as you kill it, it's with that model, it's fine.
Cool.
So, because you don't pick who's going to complete it, it's just whoever kills that model gets it. So, then you've got, so obviously +1 save on Archaon gives me a 2-up save. So, straight away, nothing to be shot. Not that's probably the one you want to get on Archaon if you can.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why you couldn't do something cheeky, like you cast a spell from Kairos through the portal to Bolt of Change the hero to leave him on a wound, then Archaon just arcane bolts them off or something. Exactly. So there's ways to do it.
When you're playing in Tzeentch, you can plan this stuff strategically, looking at your fate dice, or taking odds into account and be like, all right, well, I've got one magic missile that's easily cast that would nearly kill him. If that doesn't go off, I've got a second one, and then I've always got fate dice for Archaon to do D3 wounds with Arcane Bolt or whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, and this one's quite good. Reckless Abandon. So start your charge phase, pick a friendly Tzeentch unit that's 9 inches or more from any enemy units. If that unit ends a charge move within half an inch of an enemy model, it's completed. Add 1 to the attacks of melee weapons for the unit that completed a charge. So you could use your fate dice to make sure you got a 9 on the charge, and then charge, and then you're there, and you get it, and you immediately then get the benefit because you get to attack. So you get straight away. That's pretty good. Then you've got Tides of Anarchy. If a friendly Tzeentch unit has 9 or more models gains control of an objective that was controlled by your opponent, the objective is completed. Each Tzeentch model in that counts as 2 instead of 1. So this would be quite good if you summoned like a unit of like blue horrors, and you go like, okay, they're going to take an objective that you had. They've now completed that. Now they count as 20 blue horrors.
Yeah.
Completely. So quite good because you can, once you've got the buff you want, you could just fish for the other ones as you see fit. Like, even get +1 save on Kairos is fairly good, right? So
yeah, absolutely, yeah, definitely. Having lamented that bit of his profile, yeah.
And there's no reason why you couldn't go in and do one and then another turn do another one on Archaon, so you could kind of cycle it around on him. So it's just important to understand that. So let's talk a little bit about the spells that Steve selected, and I'll just talk about the ones that are in the army book first, then we'll go to the Warscrolls. It's quite a lot of jumping around, but that's the case of this army. So
it's an army for nerding out with, isn't it?
Well, it's complicated because it's been honed and stripped down, and this is how Steve likes to play.
It's not an easy reading book, is it, either?
Like, no, and I think there's always, whenever I try to write an Archaon list, because there's so much choice and there's so many options, you're always going, is that the right thing? Do I take this? Do I take that? What about this? I mean, even within Tzeentch, there's what you should take. Do you take allies? Which Coven do you take? What artifacts do you take? What end of spells do you take? That doesn't even touch on like the Wrath of the Everchosen rules or like everything else. So like you know, I think
local meta changes. Like, do I drop that endless spell because I'm just worried about bodies, and there's this 1 in 50 chance that someone rocks up and kills my dudes, and I can't win?
Or do I take Palisade?
Like, yeah, exactly.
Like
hard stuff.
So obviously you got Infusion Arcanum on Archaon. So let me just get to that one, because that is a Law of Fate, which is for mortal wizards, but obviously he gets to use both because he doesn't care. So it's on a 5. If you get it cast, add 1 to hit and wound rolls for attacks made by the caster into your next hero phase.
Cool.
So immediately makes him infinitely more reliable in combat.
Captain 2s and 2s.
Wound roll bonuses is big, right?
It's huge. Every wound roll on his profile is a 3. So
so pretty good. So obviously, like, that's him going to be buffing himself with that, because it's like, why wouldn't you?
It makes everything on his profile 2s and 2s apart from the Lashing Tail, which is the only crap attack on his profile. So yes, please.
Then you've got Infusion Arcanum on the Chaos Sorcerer Lord. So he's got a spell which is, it's on a 5. Add 1 to hit and... No, that's the wrong spell. I've just read that one. So he's got Shield of Fate. So this is on a 6. You pick a friendly Tzeentch unit wholly within 18. To the start of your next hero phase, the unit gains one of the following effects depending on how many destiny dice you've got. So if you've got 1 to 3, you get to reroll save rolls of 1. If you've got 4 to 6, you get to reroll save rolls. If you've got 7 to 9 dice, then if it's affected by an endless spell or a spell on a 4-up, ignore it, and you get to reroll saves. So that's quite good. I mean, obviously Archaon has those rules, and the Chaos Sorcerer Lord can make him reroll saves anyway, but you could cast that on Kairos, for example, or the Blue Scribes, or whatever. So it's quite a handy spell to have. Like,
you spend a lot of points on heroes in this list, so and you also have an abundant amount of spells, and you might just want to cast shit that isn't awful because you want summoning points anyway. So making sure that your guys are slightly more likely to be alive next turn is fine.
Yeah, and then you've got the Blue Scribes. Now he's got the spell. So we're into the demon law now. So he's got the spell Arcane Transformation. So this is quite an interesting one. So it's on a 6. You pick a friendly hero within 18. Tzeentch heroes, obviously Archaon. Until the next hero phase, you can either add 1 to the move and bravery, or add 1 to the attacks of one of that hero's melee weapons.
Either of those are great.
Now, what Steve said about this, he said that, let me just make sure I don't misquote it, that effectively what he's doing with it is that...
holding someone 1 inch away in the mirror.
Well, yeah, basically exactly that. So, like, if he's playing in the mirror, then that extra +1 move makes that his Archaon can get the charge more reliably than the other Archaon.
Yeah.
Because you can be outside of his max range of move and charge, but you could be within range with that spell, move and double 6 charge off the destiny dice. So it allows you to kill their Archaon, but they can't touch your Archaon.
It's also a way, other people having to do that maths when you've both rolled different fate dice and stuff like that. It's a way for a better player to be an even better player on the table, I think.
Yeah, so
this is already teching out, and that's just further ways to mentally load your opponent.
It's just another thing that you could do, which I think's fairly good. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of hero phase shenanigans in this list, so the more we talk about it, the more it will come in. And then Kairos has just got Bolt of Change. It's on a 7. Pick any unit of an 18. It takes D6 mortal wounds. Can't be cast more than once per turn, even though it appears on both the Lord of Change and in the Law of Fate. But you don't have a Lord of Change because Kairos has got a different spell. So you can literally cast this. So that's a lot of spells. But let's go into the Warscrolls, because this is where we're really unlocking the ability of Archaon. So I think that's pretty much all the stuff from the book I wanted to cover. Yeah. So obviously I know people who are watching this might be going, when are you going to get to the ins and outs? But it's just important to have the context of all of this, so when we start talking about it, you're going to understand what we're saying.
Some of these things wouldn't matter if it wasn't for fate dice,
Well, exactly.
It's really important.
You wouldn't be talking about getting a 6/6 charge if you couldn't guarantee it. So I think probably the first thing is talk about the Chaos Sorcerer Lord. Now, he's like, for my money, he's auto-include if you're playing Archaon.
Sometimes if you're just playing Chaos, he's auto-include.
Well, yeah, I mean, any Chaos. I mean, like, he's so good. Like, obviously, he's got... The main reason is he's got Oracular Visions. So, in your hero phase, pick a friendly mortal, saves to darkness unit wholly within 12. They can reroll saves. Archaon's mortal, he saves to darkness. He's just going to get reroll saves on Archaon. Can't be stopped, can't be unbound. No roll, just happens.
If he's going to die turn 1 or 2 as well. So, you just set him up, wind him up, and then shoot
him up, let him go. He's also a wizard. He gets demonic power. On a 6, pick a friendly mortal, slaves to dark units, holding an 18. Reroll hit wounds, wound rolls, and saves. So, demonic power on Archaon, obnoxious. Now, it's on a... What you might be saying is, well, if you're using the other, why would you cast that? You get the hit rolls and wound rolls. Maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd cast something else. But the thing is, the Oracular Visions is guaranteed. Demonic power is like a better version. It's really good. So he's 110 points. He's a decent wizard. And you want casts. You want to be able to get your points up. So
you also need someone in there who's not a named character, right?
You want your 3 unit screamers, don't you? So it's
yes, you do, please. So 110 points to gain 160 points worth of stuff is already good. Now,
Kairos. So Kairos is obviously a Lord of Change. So he moves 14. He flies. He's got a 4-up save. What he's got. So when he makes a casting roll, unbinding or dispelling roll, you can change the lowest d6 to match the highest d6. So that's very reliable casting from him. He's also got once per turn, you can pick an ender spell with an 18 and it's dispelled. Archaon's got another ability like this, so you can actually get rid of multiple ender spells in a turn.
Oh, that's great. For free.
Yeah, and doesn't even cost you a cast.
Great.
He's also got this ability, which is probably the most powerful thing you could do with Kairos with Archaon, is the Oracle of Eternity. So once a battle in either player's turn, you can replace a single dice from one of the following dice rolls. So, you only replace one dice on a 2d6 roll, but then those rolls cannot be modified or re-rolled. So you can make a charge fail. If they got like +4 to charge, you can make it fail because the +4 wouldn't come into effect. So if they've got like a Sigvald charge, they're getting +3. You could change one of the dice to a 1. He's not getting the +3 anymore. He's 9 away in Lurid Haze, for example. He's failed. You can't make that charge. You can't re-roll it for command point because you're not allowed to. It's instantly neutered an Alpha Strike. So it's good for that. It's also good if you want to cheek a pop 6 on his wound roll for his Sword of Kings. But you could use fate dice for that if you've got those. Also really good to guarantee a cast of an endless spell. Just so many uses. It's
and hard and impossible to play against. Almost, you end up with people trying to bait it out of you. You know, it rewards patience. It can just be intimidating if you spaff it out super soon. It's a very, very scary thing to have against you. Obviously, if someone is threatening it, that gives you way more potential power on the table than if you've used it. So I guess there's probably quite a lot of art about knowing when to use that and when to hold on to it or use something else.
So one of the things Steve said is that essentially a counter to Alpha Strikes, which we talked about, but also you can, with Archaon, firing Daemonrift in turn 2. So basically it says if you're feeling cheeky, you can use the Destiny dice to cast Daemonrift on a 7. The opponent unbinds, you can use Kairos to change one of the dice to the 1. So the max they can roll is a 7, which doesn't beat 7.
Yeah.
And all the positive modifiers to unbind don't count.
Sorry, Nagash.
So you basically auto cast the spell. You've used 2 fate dice and you've used your Kairos dice, but that Daemonrift going off is...
That's
like
twisting the knife.
That is
you just
like
stab someone with.
wow. Especially if you've got mirrors and geminids up and you've got wizards around it and they've got wizards, it's just so much damage.
So that it does D3 damage plus the amount of wizards within a range or something like that?
Well, I'll go to it now. So it's a predatory spell, and you set it up within 12. You set up within 9, it moves 12. So when it's set up, he can make a move. So after it's moved, each unit there's any models passed across and each other unit's within 1 at the end, so there's D3 mortals. Add 1 to the number of mortal wounds by this endless spell for each wizard and each other endless spell within 12 of this model after it's moved. So if you've got the end of the mirror, you've got the 2 geminids, you've got your wizard because Archaon's there, they've got a couple wizards. You could literally be doing like D3 plus 4 mortal wounds to everything it touches. So you could instant kill heroes, like 5 wound heroes, just instantly kill them all. Because it's a 12-inch move.
That could be the first thing you did in a hero phase when you've got like 12 other things coming because you're Tzeentch and shooting and combat.
And it's unstoppable. That is like, it's so obnoxious. I love it. Like that's like, it's just horrendously good. My compressor, don't know why that went on. So yeah, very good. So Kairos, he's got the Oracle of Eternity rule, so that's obviously extremely powerful. He's also gets free spells, and this is the other thing, he knows all the spells of wizards that are wholly within 18 of him. So
doesn't say friendly, does it?
Friendly wizards, sorry.
Okay, friendly.
But obviously that means that you can cast Demonic Power from Kairos. It's a lot harder to stop. It's a lot more reliable. Yeah. You obviously can cast all of the other spells you've got from him. He's also got Gift of Change, so this is quite a nasty spell to put through the spell portal. So it's on an 8. Pick an enemy unit within 18. That unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the Gift of Change value, so it's just 6 if you haven't taken any damage, which could instantly kill a hero if you want to. If any models were slain, before removing the first slain model, set up a Tzeentch Chaos spawn and set up within 3 of the model's unit.
Yes, please. So why not have some more stuff? You do need bodies, so...
Yeah, and like you can kill a model, set up a spawn, pins them in combat, gives you an extra model. It's just a free model per turn.
Underrated ability, that one.
I think it's really strong. The fact you've got the mirrors allows you to get it where you need it to go. It gives you then a mirror at the end of where you want to be doing. Because he can cast Demonic Power, so he can cast the mirrors and Demonic Power and then Gift, and then the Chaos Sorcerer could then put down, for example, Geminid, because he's not needing to cast Demonic Power, and then Archaon could use the Daemonrift. So because you can move the spells around by Kairos casting them, because a wizard can only cast one endless spell, so it allows you to get all the spells off you want. Now, we haven't even looked at the Blue Scribes yet. So again, some people might be getting a headache from this army. So it's the Blue Scribes. So 16-inch moving hero, so he's a good summoning platform. Again, he's got frantic scribbling. Each time a wizard holding within 18 successfully casts a spell that's not unbound, and it's possible for this model to cast, you can roll a dice. On a 4+, he knows the spell for the rest of the battle. So again, he can get demonic power on his Warscroll if you want to. Then once in each of your hero phases, when this model attempts to cast a spell, instead of making a casting roll, you can say that he will read from the scrolls. On a 2+, the spell is automatically cast and cannot be unbound.
120 points, guys.
Yeah, like, I'm just going to auto cast demonic power on a 2+. You can't unbind it, and he's fast enough that on the first turn he can sneak up near where Archaon's going to be. He knows the spell because I cast it in the first turn, and I managed to get my 4 up. And now he's fighting, and then now he's doing demonic power in the next turn or whatever. So, yeah, super flexible. He's also got the boon of Tzeentch on a 4. If successfully cast, you can re-roll casting rolls for Tzeentch wizards holding within 18 for the rest of that phase.
And just why not?
So, like, you can literally cast that first and go, I'm re-rolling all my cast rolls just in case. So it's Kairos re-rolling, and you swap one of the dice to the highest. You don't have to touch your fate dice. Like, yeah. It's so strong.
And don't forget, guys, even if you don't need the spells, that still is racking up your summoning points. So those are going to become units with your 5 casts. I think you have 6 casts you've got a turn.
Yeah, so you've got 3 off Kairos, 1 off the Scribes, 1 off the Chaos Sorcerer, 2 off Archaons, so that's 7.
7.
Yeah. Plus Arcanites are casters too, which we haven't got to yet. But so you could end up with 7 fate dice in your turn. 9 dice in a turn, so 1 away from being able to summon a unit. So if they then cast a spell immediately, you've got enough points. But in your second turn, you should be up, and the points don't reset to 0. You spend what you need, and then you keep the extras. So
when this book was written, guys, they didn't apply the standard things that make things.
It's only
less
Khorne
good.
that ever had that, right? There's only Khorne. Because I used to sit in these things going, what about Khorne? What about Khorne? Like, and not only Khorne, like, you've got to choose whether you want the buff or you want to just lose all the points and get a unit.
Yeah, well,
so
Khorne, it gets rid of it. Slanesh, it's delayed by literally like a turn.
Yeah.
They need not apply for this, you know.
Yeah. Blue Scribes, I mean, apart from the assembly of the model, it's great. I would say, like, it's also very good to have a little 16-inch move-in, zippy summoning platform. Because he can fly and then summon. Because it's the end of the movement phase. You can move 16, plop your unit down where it needs to be. So, obviously, it allows you to put blue horrors exactly where you need them to be. He's also a Tzeentch hero, so he gets the most with a hit and melee and stuff. He's not very survivable. He's going to die quite easy. But
you got some fate dice. If you need to keep him alive for an objective from shooting or something, you can.
Yeah, and you've got spells you can put on him to increase his survivability. You can give him rerollable 4-up save, for example. You know, I think he's fairly key. I think, like, Steve's a big believer in him, that, like, by not taking horrors and the duplicitous host for the summoning, like, shenanigans where you tar pit people. He's like, well, actually, I'd rather have the Scribes. I get the flexibility in objective play. I get the powerful, can't be unbind again against Techless. Very strong, because you can't stop it. Like,
the list is quite a lot about denying probability a chance to screw you over, isn't it? And this guy completely fits in with that.
Yeah, and like anything that allows you to get around, auto unbinds, is great, because that key spell that he knows you need to get off, I can get it off, so it's fine. Blue Scribes, big fan. We've talked about Kairos, we talked about that. So Screamers, talk about they're
fast, cheap,
movement fast,
more
fast.
good against big things.
So they do damage D3 against monsters. Obviously, if they get the command ability, they get the extra rend, the extra attack. And also, when they move, you can pick a unit you've moved across, roll a dice on a 5-up, takes a mortal wound. if the enemy uses a wizard for each 5 up to D3 mortal wounds. So
yeah,
it sounds it doesn't sound very good, but you roll a dice for each model in the unit that pass across any models from that unit. So if you have 6 of them and they all move across a wizard, that's 6 dice for each 5 up as D3 mortals. It's free as well. It's like, and 16 inches is like fast enough that you could probably pip someone and move backwards.
Plus a run roll as well, you know.
Yeah.
If you're not sending them into combat, you could have them with a 1 roll, and I think you can turn that to a 6. Someone might have 2 wounds left on a wizard, and this could be something that wins you the game.
It does say normal move, so I think a run might be a normal move. But
I think it is.
Yeah, I can't. I'll get myself muddled up, but yeah, check that what a normal move is, because I think it is technically a run is still a normal move. I think it's any move in the movement phase, but I might be getting that wrong.
Not charges, so, I believe, is what I've got in my head.
Yeah. So pretty cool. Then Kairos Acolytes. So again, like, they're just there they've got a little bit of shooting, not that it really does a lot. He's given them the Cursed Glaives, which give them like sort of damage 2 with Rend. They've got an Adept, and basically 1 in every 10 can have a scroll. Add 1 to casting and binding rolls for the unit, so more reliable casting. 1 in every 10 can be accompanied by a Volcark. If a friendly wizard casts a spell with if an enemy wizard casts a spell with an 18 on a 4+, they take a mortal wound. So it's just a little pip. It doesn't really come into play very often. Obviously, you've got the shields, which is 6 up mortal wound save, the bounce save. But they're a wizard, so they can cast a spell, gives you fate points. And basically pick a friendly Kairos Acolyte unit holder within 9 to an exterior phase, improve the rend of the sorceress bolts by 1. So basically they're just going to be sit there putting that buff on themselves. That gives you a fate point. These are going to be sat very far away trying to stay alive and hold objectives.
Mining you points to get more troops.
Yeah. So just giving you points. So, and they can chip away a little bit. So pretty good. Like, the Kairos Acolytes. So we talked about the Darkfire Daemonrift. So, like, obviously that's a very strong magical ability. So I'll just go through some of the notes that I asked Steve for. So we touched on a lot of this, but I'll just do these as he's bullet pointed these. So I'll go through them. So pre-game move is great for Archaon. In the mirror, the spell on the Scribes, the +1 movement can be used to keep the opposing Archaon out of max range while given the 12-inch charge due to the +1 movement for the spell and fate dice. So that's the bit we talked about. So pre-game move can be good against Deep Strike Alpha. We talked about that. Kairos dice, we talked about that. Scribes are gold. The reroll cast gives so much reliability to the list for both damage and summoning. While the list is small, during the late game, the 16-inch move summoning platform is very useful. Shield of Fate is clutch in keeping Archaon alive mid-late game when fired through a spell portal. So that's him casting it through a portal to buff Archaon to give him his reroll armor saves or reroll ones to save.
Yeah.
Typical summoning is
out of range of the sorcerer, I guess. So it's just a bit of redundancy there, isn't it?
You use the portal tools. You could put demonic power through it or whatever. So you've got like ways to buff Archaon through the portal, or you can use it aggressively to bolt stuff. Normally,
it's disgusting because you use it turn 1 to hurt someone, and then turn 2 to keep your dude alive.
And you can remove the portal automatically when it's not in the right position, and then recast it because you've got a way to do it with Kairos and a way to do it with Archaon. So you could just say, "I'm just going to take it off the board. I'm going to recast it. It's now there."
Someone's going to be in range.
It's the same with like the Daemonrift. Like you can literally you could go into a turn, and they get the turn roll. You get to move it, do your damage. So and then if they don't do that, you get the turn. You could just unbind it, cast it again, do the damage. So it's like you get to double down on that. So if you go, I think if you go on the flip flop between 2 to 3, that could be pretty impactful because you're effectively doing that sweep twice before they get to react.
That's like the internet range Bloodthirster. It's just like
yeah. And like you could literally go, well, I've done my go, I've done that, let's roll for turn. You take the turn, that Daemonrift is going to go through and mess you up. You give me the turn, I'm just going to do it anyway. Yep. So he said that so typical summoning is nuts. You get 3 6 screamers, 2 to 3 spawns, average of 20 blues, around 500 points of free stuff in 3 turns is what he's saying. So which is kind of...
Sounds like Steve's never got to turn 4 because his opponent's
He's probably
dead.
won by then. Or Archaon's dead and you've just got to go have a cry. He said he originally ran 10 pinks while they're good at holding up Marathi, didn't earn their points back. Scribes gives him more bodies early. And the summoning tends to lack up for the bodies in the mid-late game because you get more summoning, more stuff. So I also like the way that Scribes bypasses some auto stops. So I think that's fairly good. I did ask him a few follow-up questions and asked him just explain Archaon in the list. And he describes him as the snowplow. So you load him up with Arcane, Infusion, Arcanum, reroll saves, demonic power, and he's rerolling everything, mostly on a 2+2+. If you're close enough, you can use Geminids to stop anything hitting him back the following turn. On missions where the board is narrow, objectives are bunched, like Battle for the Past, focal points, etc., he deploys late and goes into the biggest, hardest thing he can find. On missions with objectives more spread out, he goes down the flanks, smashes stuff out the way, leaving the Screamers to initially cap the initial objectives and then using summons late game before moving into the more mid-table position to stop things getting past him. So you almost use it like you kind of play a game of cat and mouse in the middle. He sweeps up around the side and then smashes back in. Or you go into a narrow table, you just fucking smash it right in the middle. So
hard to resist, isn't it? I think often when people take something that's 800 points, they feel like it has to be doing something turn 1. So that these and
he absolutely will be. You don't really want to go after Judicators on the flank, do you? You want to be in the middle of the meet. So it's interesting because obviously the game is won on scenario. So you've obviously he's thought a lot about this list, so obviously he's played a lot with it. I asked him what his bad matchups were. So he said anything with lots of bodies you can't kill or get away from. So Savage Orcs in Bone Grins is one of the things he highlighted. With lots of heroes who are immune to Battle Shock, or lots of horrors in Duplicitous Hosts, ironically, because you can't retreat and you can't get them all because you don't do that much damage against infantry bodies. If you're playing against elite stuff, it's really good. MSU, or multiple small unit style builds that are fast moving, e.g. Alapec spam, teleporting Calibron, Daughters of Cain. Now these lists I would say are all fairly renegade. It's
cool actually that he's listed none of those are the obvious choice at all.
No, and obviously when you're at tournaments, if you're up in the upper echelons, you're probably not facing some of those lists.
You're against the cliches, aren't you? Generally.
Yeah, you're against the usual suspects. The scenarios that it hates are ones with lots of objectives. Scorched Earth is the worst, obviously. So, and he also said that on a note, at the moment, if you run the list and win games, there's a good chance you'll face a mirror match. He said he's played one mirror match in every event since Hammer Time 3. I don't know how many events he's done, but I know he's been doing a lot on TTS.
Yeah.
At that point, it comes down to Destiny Dice and who blinks first, which is what I was talking about, that Mexican standoff. He says, typically he'll stick by my will and shove Archaon up the table. There's a good chance both Archaons die. If not, he's already in his lines and the other Archaon has to try and move around, meaning his soft stuff stays safe. Being aware of fate dice is key. You don't want to be loading up your opponent's summoning pool if they are going next, and you can avoid it. So spell economy is to keep an eye on. So obviously you don't want to get near the 7 because in their turn they get to cast 3 spells. They get up to the 10, and in their turn they can summon, and they cap the objective. So it's very technical. So yeah, I think that he gave me I do appreciate Steve sending me that information.
High quality stuff.
And I know that Steve is a top player, so it's good to hear that from him.
For about 15 years, hasn't he?
He's been out of the country for a long time, so he's not been around, but he's been solid. So from that list again, what he's done is he's maximized the impact Archaon has on the game by making sure he survives, and he's got redundancy. So although he's got demonic power on one model, if the Blue Scribes gets it as well, then Kairos also knows it. So you've got multiple places to cast it. You've also got the other spells like Arcane Transformation and Shield of Fate on Archaon to protect him. He's got Mystic Shield and things like that. So basically, he's got spells to do damage. He's got the Geminids to debuff the opponent, which And actually, if you get hit, Archaon gets hit by like -1 to hit, he doesn't really care because you've probably got +2 to hit on him anyway. So,
and there's only a 50% chance he gets hit as is.
Yeah, and
and he's got a mortal save.
And he's got a mortal save. So it's like yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like you can be very aggressive with Archaon because you've got the fate dice as well. You can guarantee long charges. You've got the pre-game move to be aggressive on turn 1. So your opponent's going to be going, do I give him first turn? And you can obviously be like so ballsy to just put him in the middle of the table, move 6 inches pre-game up the middle of the table, and just be like, go on then. Like
some things, even if you haven't buffed him, some things just can't deal with that on their first turn anyway. No. In which case, if you're completely free, or they can do 6 wounds to him, which fine.
Then you go, that's fine. He's got 20. I don't care. He'll D3 because I'm going to use that ability. Then, so it's like a force multiplier of awesomeness. I love the Daemonrift play. Go in turn 1, smash stuff up. Turn 2, unleash the Daemonrift. It's like that is just grim. Kairos is just there making Archaon obnoxious. And the thing is as well, like when you look at the list, you go, what's the target? You've got to deal with Archaon.
I think Blue Scribes is one of the key targets.
I think he is,
in terms of it actually being killable.
I think he is, yeah. And then you're like, for me, I would be prioritising if I can get rid of the Sorcerer Lord and the Blue Scribes. That goes for demonic power and ocular visions. But then like you've got Kairos, so it's like Kairos is there, Archaon's there. You got the heroes, but also the units are capping the objectives. So like you're like, I need to kill the units, but if I kill the units, Archaon's just going to kill me. So it's like, I think what this does is there's so many things that this
target saturation
can do. You almost have no idea how to deconstruct it because it's got so much redundancy in it. And I think
the only thing in there that doesn't feel efficient is the screamers, but they work with a list. That's the only thing that you don't look at and think points for point. That's absolutely incredible.
I don't know because they're battle lines, so Scorched Earth they're good, and then they move 16.
Oh yeah, so they're the lowest level of value per point in the list,
and they're still great. I rate Scream, especially with the command ability, and you've got ways to do mortals on them, and I love the list. I think it's fantastic. It's such a well thought out, rounded list. I think it would be fun, a lot of fun to play with that. I know it. I know that as a like more advanced player, I would enjoy the minutiae of all those decisions, and I think it could be overwhelming for a newer player. But when you write a list like this, you need to know what you're getting yourself into.
Archaon's also a flexible enough boy that you could start out with a more destruction style list where it's like 30 dudes, go and hit them hard.
Yeah.
And then as you become more accustomed, you can get into the more techie stuff, or it might turn out that there's a techie way to go combat-y or something like that.
Yeah, and like the thing about Archaon is that you can build a list around him to get the most out of him that suits your play style. So it might be that you do him in Khorne and you use like the Reapers of Vengeance and all that stuff that was around back in the day, the Mark Wildman style that I took to the GT final after FACEHAMMER when I bought my Archaon. You've got like Slaves to Darkness, just straight Everchosen, the sort of the allegiance there for the night, using the Varangard and things like that. You've got Legion the First Prince list that you come up with Be'lakor is still really interesting.
Yeah, surprisingly techie Khorne as well available for him. I think no one realizes how techie he's got so much to him that any army with like a summoning pool or ability style thing, he becomes this crazy linchpin, and from him you do 500 different things.
Yeah, and like you could even do him in Slaanesh with like
twice
secrets
as well, or 3 times.
Yeah, and then Chaos Lord as well. So you've got 3 ways to make him go, with all that sort of stuff. I mean, there's like, you've got if he dies, he goes as well. So you can really get your maximum out of him. Like he's a head knight, he gets exploding attacks, he gets like there's loads of stuff you can do. There's almost so much you could do with him that it becomes a little bit overwhelming.
Analysis paralysis.
Maggot King as well, like he's good in Maggot King, so like you've obviously got like a lot of buffs, like after saves, from the Herald, whatever his name is, the what I'm trying to say, the guy on horse. No, the guy on horse.
Oh, the Lord of Plagues.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
He's
It's
got a
not.
name.
It's a herald of something.
Horsey
Pestilence. I don't know.
Nurgle,
Yeah, so he's the guard demonic mount, but he gives him like a 5 path to save, command ability, and then you've got like stuff like the Sloppity Bile Piper that can buff him because he's a demon. And he's Nurgle. You get the run and charge from the tree. You get the boom from the bell on the Great and Clean one. You get the it's like it just layers on layers on layers on layers.
Yep. For
And
everything.
like I think him being like -1 to hit in melee, and then if they've got Geminis, they're -2 in this list, so it's -2 to hit him, and he's rerolling his 2+ armor save. You're just like, what? Like, and what?
And people are re-rolling 6s just to
and you've got to reroll 6/6s, so like you're literally just like. Pff. I mean, you could play. I think this is why I like the Tzeentch list so much. I just think it just fills so many of the gaps.
It counters the obvious weaknesses so nicely, doesn't it? Pre-game move, auto dispel, like pooping them for free, like everywhere. Yeah, really.
Yeah, so I've wanted to cover the list and explain it. It's been a long explanation, and thanks for everyone who stuck with us. If you've got questions, you can put them in the chat below. If you've got an Archaon allegiance or a list you particularly like, put it in the comments below. I'll probably follow this up with another Archaon show at some point, so we'll go revisit him in a different allegiance, because we did a techless show and that went down pretty well. But the problem with Archaon is there's so many options. You'd be there for like 5 hours. And we just talked about one list in a lot of detail. So I really appreciate Steve sharing that, because obviously that's his competitive list that we've just explained it, all the new minutiae of how it works. But I think he's probably that confident in it that he's like, well, whatever, you can know what it does, it doesn't matter.
He's so calculated. This is probably part of his game. He's given people more than anyone could think about. So I'm just going to turn up with 5 pages of notes. Oh god, this is how screwed I am.
No, he's not that arrogant. Steve's a great guy. He's very down to earth. So I was just kidding. So in case people who don't, because I know him, I say things like that and realise that people watching this might not actually know anything about him and think, oh, he sounds like a right.
Steve. It's a shame he's in our country.
Yeah, he's in the Netherlands at the moment. He was in China for a bit. I think he's back to the UK at some point. So hopefully we'll see him at an event when all this COVID stuff passes us by. But I want to talk quickly before we sign off about FACEHAMMER. It was in Brisbane. So Dan from Airshort. So there was a variant Archaon Tzeentch list that came third, Zach Lear. And I just want to talk about that because it gives you an interesting dichotomy of what Steve's done and what Zach's done. So he's got Archaon, he's got the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, he's got obviously a different Coven, he's in Host Duplicitous for the retreat, Kairos is in there, he's gone for 5 Chaos Warriors Tunics of Pink Horrors for the splitting tar pits, and he's still got Umbral Spell Portal and Geminids, but then Palisade. So it's less wounds, it's sort of less but more bodies, I guess you could say that. And, it's obviously got different things, but it shows you that it's still a Tzeentch Archaon list, but it's very different. So there's what I like about this is it's a very different take on it. And
the same book with a load of points the same as well.
Yeah, and it will play completely differently. So the Host Duplicitous has not been able to retreat. I'm not going to go through all this in detail. I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but I haven't had a chance to speak to Zach about it. But that is pretty cool that there's at FACEHAMMER, an Archaon Tzeentch list went on the podium, and obviously there was 9 or 10 Archaons in attendance, so he's definitely in the meta if people are playing games at the moment. So it's just interesting, and just a little special shout out to D Matthews going 4-1 with Slaanesh with Glutos Fiendstar. So much respect, Dino. So I like
Solid,
that.
Dude.
So
love the list. Super cool.
Yeah, and we may cover that on a future show. It's very similar to a list I think we came up with on our first impressions of Slaanesh. But yeah, it's super good. Lauren Hayes
allies in there.
Yeah, I think he's got Exalted Flamers as allies for shooting, rather than trying to find the shooting within the Slaanesh book, which is something I didn't think about looking at Tzeentch for shooting with Slaanesh, but actually makes perfect sense. But that's our Archaon show. So I just wanted to cover the big man, talk about Steve's list, and talk about competitive Archaon lists in Tzeentch. As I said earlier, let us know the Archaon lists or allegiances that you want to see. Put it in the comments below, and we'll do a follow-up show. Probably talk about Archaon in Khorne or something else. So
absolutely. And I can guarantee that whatever we talk about will not be as well thought through as that list was, because that was an absolute masterclass. That was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I did warn you it was going to be a long one. When I said you only got one list, I was like, yeah, it's going to take a long time. So
that's fine. I'm going to write something with a Keeper and Archaon and 2 other units.
Yeah,
it's expensive and it'll be a short one.
Just like spam the same thing 5 times, like Vanguard times 3 Archaon, Chaos Sorcerer. Go. Yeah. So hope you enjoyed that. Let us know what you thought, and we'll catch you all soon.
See you in a bit, guys. Bye.
Bye.